NBA teams getting the chance to select either the first or second pick, sometimes they have to think about who they draft. Only every now and then will there be an all-time generational great talent that transcends the league. Of course, some of the most hype all-timers includes Lou Alcindor. A coin toss between the Bucks and Suns changed the direction of both franchises. The Tim Duncans of the world leading San Antonio to 5 titles, and LeBron James being the most guaranteed consensus #1 pick this century. 30 out of 30 teams would have taken those legends, but some of the greats who gets passed up by certain teams only to end up with a future draft bust, absolutely unforgiving decisions that still haunts those franchises decades later. It's one thing for teams to pass up on future superstars, but when those same players they miss out on end up meeting them in the playoffs only to get destroyed, abused, annihilated, and obliterated, some of the biggest beatdowns of all time the league will forever remember. All those teams on this list still getting owned by those players they missed out on. Absolute cursed draft decisions only to get reminded for their incompetency. Those GMs might still have nightmares waking up in the middle of the night seeing those superstars wreck their franchise to no return. Starting with Dave Cowens, underrated, often forgotten top 75 player, the former MVP out of Florida State, forever known for his all-out hustle and energy. It was retired Celtics legend Bill Russell convincing Boston to draft him, resembles similar qualities to Russell himself. While Detroit selected Bob Lanier first, San Diego grabbed Rudy Tomjanovich. The Atlanta Hawks went with college superstar and most popular player in the class, Pistol Pete Maravich. Despite the flash and talent, Cowens had the way more successful NBA career. Pistol never ended up winning a playoff series with the Hawks. Cowens beating Maravich squad twice, the 72 and 73 Eastern semis, winning both series in 6. Maravich finished his career with the 1980 Celtics, joining Cowens. The Hawks would just win 1 playoff series, during Pete and Dave's time in the NBA. Boston 2 titles in the 70s. Larry Bird out of Indiana State. It was Boston and Red Auerbach's greatness who took a massive gamble, drafting the small-town country boys 6 overall the 78 draft. Being junior eligible, the Blazers, Kings, Pacers, Knicks, and Warriors passed up on the French League sensation. Had Larry fully committed to leaving Indiana, Boston wouldn't have been able to land the generational prodigy. Years later, a couple of those teams paid the price, starting with the New York Knicks, who drafted Michael Ray Richardson, a good player in his own right, traded for Bernard King in '82, becoming Bird's biggest rival in the East after Dr. J. Met in an epic semi-showdown 1984. New York and Bernard held their own, but it was Larry Legend who came out on top, outscoring King in the series. Insanely efficient numbers of over 30 points, 10.5 rebounds, 7 assists, trumping King's 29-point average. Both teams defended home court advantage. Bernard's 44 in Game 6 forced a decisive Game 7, but in Boston Garden, Bird reigned supreme, a 39-point, 12-rebound triple-double. King held to just 24. The MVP set the tone, did a bit of everything. The Knicks never had a chance. First round 1988 playoffs, a 31-year-old Bird averaged 28.3 points, 8 assists, an easy 3-1 series win over Patrick Ewing and Gerald Wilkins. Even on a bad back, 31-year-old Bird still lethal as ever. New York finally beat Bird's squad in 1990, but the Knicks never reached the conference finals throughout the 80s thanks to the legend. Larry's other victim, his hometown Indiana Pacers. Due to tight finances, Indy originally earned the first pick but traded that to draft number 3, went with a guy named Rick Roby, who later ended up being Bird's teammate in Boston. Former owner Bobby Leonard's wife will never forget the worst mistake the franchise ever made. Since the ABA merger, Indy wouldn't get past the first round till 1994 after Bird retired. Struggled throughout most of the 80s until the Reggie Miller era. The banged up 34-year-old already dealt with numerous injuries and even 2-2 series, 91 playoffs, Game 5 clincher, battling the cocky but confident Reggie Miller and Chuck Person. Bird fractured his cheekbone with a concussion going down, combined with severe back problems. Most players today would have needed a stretcher. Uncertain to return, Larry channeled his inner Willis Reed moment, refusing to let Chuck Person get the last word, both having their back and forth trash-talking history. After Bird came back, refusing to go down, Boston did trail 83-80 before going up by 16, prevailing in the series, led to the rise of the Pacers. And one lasting impression on the heart of the toughest superstar the game has ever witnessed. Both Bird and Person finished the game with 32, a Boston 124-121 win. Larry Legend simply captured all the emotions from fans who witnessed his greatness firsthand, something many fans today still have absolutely no idea about. Karl Malone, one of the greatest draft steals at 13. Believing he'd go 8th to Dallas, his mid-range game the main reason why teams didn't draft him higher. Everybody wanted bruising fours at the time. The Clippers took center Benoit Benjamin, a solid role player, but not even close to Malone's greatness. Seattle went with Xavier McDaniel 4th. Karl's Jazz knocked off the 7th-seeded Clippers. The 92 and 97 playoffs averaged 30 and 12 with 2 blocks. The cursed franchise never got past the first round in Los Angeles until 2 years after Malone retired. Mailman balled out both times, still made more conference finals throughout the 90s alone than the Clippers' entire existence. Against the Sonics, Malone's Jazz faced them 4 different times, the outcome 2-2, losers in 93 and 96, but deciding games, but winners in 92 and 2000. The consistent power forward put up over 29 and 10. McDaniel no longer with the team then, but former Clipper pick Benjamin was buried on the bench. Karl left a punctuating statement Game 4, a huge slam to seal it, closed out with 37 and 13 Game 5 before falling to Portland the next round. 8 years later, the 36-year-old supposed to fade out after missing his chances 2 years before to Jordan's Bulls, but the king of longevity power forward had one of his greatest playoff series, put up 30.6 points, 59% from the field, including a playoff career-high 50 points Game 1, still ran the floor like a deer, a master at the mid-range J. His experience and chemistry with Stockton, top-notch. Torching the younger Vin Baker, Malone still remains the oldest player in postseason history to drop 50. Many guys his age all faded out, but Malone's lethal jumper, post-ups, and top-notch conditioning proved he can still perform like a top 10 player. That was his last playoff series won with the Jazz before taking his talents to LA. Michael Jordan, absolutely destroying, abusing, bullying, and haunting Blazers fans all these years later, an all-time finals performance. One can only imagine how many titles a duo of Jordan and Drexler would have gotten. Being 2 of the best guards at the time, prime Drexler a bit taller, Sam Bowie no longer with the team then. GM Stu Inman refused to listen to Bobby Knight, begging him to draft MJ, but already having Drexler and decent shooting guard Jim Paxson, the 80s still being a big man era to build around, Jordan made them pay, went bonkers from 3, set the tone Game 1, dropped 35 of his 39 points, first half including the iconic shrug, daring MJ to shoot and beat them from the outside, but the Blazers did everything possible to fight back, even the series 2-2, MJ a classic 46, the 5th game on the road, dominating on a bruised heel, absolutely nothing Drexler and the defense could do, putting on the finishing touches, the one-on-one moves on Clyde, the ferocious defense late Game 6 and slam. Rick Adelman couldn't believe himself. Jordan scored a dozen of his 33 the final 6 minutes of Game 6, a punctuating statement to repeat. The comparisons between the two never discussed again. Jordan also dominated him at practice on the Dream Team. The numbers and results totally lopsided. The gap between prime Jordan and the second best player, the biggest the NBA has ever seen. The Blazers franchise still hasn't gotten back to the finals, 32 years and counting. 1987, Suns had a chance on Scottie Pippen. David Robinson, consensus first pick. The 3 guys drafted above Scottie, Armin Gilliam, Dennis Hobson, and Reggie Williams, all solid role players, but 0 all-star appearances amongst the 3. Gilliam no longer with Phoenix when Scottie's Bulls met Barkley in the finals. Although MJ dominated, Pippen led the Bulls in rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, also put up 21 points of his own, an underrated dunk in the face of Sir Charles. At the peak of his all-around powers, a 27, 9, and 5 Game 1 stat line, did all the little things, the forgotten clutch block on Danny Ainge 3, late Game 2, Suns could have tied it. Seizing his moments, the second leading scorer in the closeout Game 6, 23 points, 12 boards, 5 dimes, and 4 steals, one of his greatest all-around series, solidifying himself as one of the greatest second options the game will see. Pippen also later made the Sonics regret trading him on draft day, beating them in the '96 finals, 16-8-5 numbers, a total defensive team performance. Hard to imagine how the NBA would have looked if Pippen started the first decade of his career in a Seattle uniform. Kobe Bryant, passed up by several teams. In an alternate universe, if the first pick was to draft the guaranteed best players, the sensational teenager would have had an interesting career with the Sixers. After a historic Western Conference Finals run at age 22, the best two-way player in the game allowed Shaq to cook the Sixers down low. Outside of the struggling Game 1 loss, Bryant proceeded to average 27, 9, and 6 over the next 4 games, all wins, a bounce-back 31.8 rebounds, 6 assists Game 2, being hobbled by Aaron McKee, Eric Snow, and Raja Bell, hitting an array of difficult shots, one huge dagger after another. Especially Game 3, never allowed Philly to make a serious run. A clutch runner down the stretch put his team up 2 possessions. After winning those finals, Kobe handed the Larry O trophy, sitting in the locker room showers, creating one of the most iconic photos the world of sports has come to know. Minnesota, having the 5th pick, selected Ray Allen, traded him for Marbury. Flip Saunders recalled having considerations taking the high schooler, given KG came straight to the pros the year before. While it took a while for Kobe to emerge as a pure superstar, Garnett was already one of the best players by 2000. Minnesota could have been a dynasty with Kobe and KG. As Bryant won his three-peat with Shaq, Garnett's Wolves still hasn't gotten past the first round. Punished with the Joe Smith scandal, Bryant and Garnett faced off the 03 playoffs, absolutely torching the backcourt of Troy Hudson and Wally Zerviak. Averaged 32, 5 and 7, a 39-piece start-off Game 1. Despite Minnesota having home court, none of that mattered against the 3-time defending champs. The Mamba made sure the entire Twin City paid for their fatal draft mistakes, a series highlighted by one of the filthiest baseline jams we ever seen. 16 of his 32 in the third, close out Game 6, scored 10 in the first, 245 of the fourth. Shaq sat in foul trouble. The fresh 24-year-old's legs, with the polished footwork and Jordan-esque fadeaways, no defense was going to stop the best guard in the game. One of the best footwork, poetry, and motion we ever seen, proved he was the best player in the series. Bryant also responsible for stopping Minnie's magical 04 Conference Finals run, dropped 22 of his 31 the second half of Game 4, took a commanding 3-1 lead. Had Minnesota got past the Lakers that series, would have had a legit chance against the 04 Pistons. After their defeat to the Lakers, the franchise wouldn't win another playoff series till 20 long years later, thanks to Anthony Edwards. Kobe also famously wore a Celtics shirt in pre-draft workout. Red Auerbach told ML Call to make the decision on the 8th pick. Uncertain about guards coming out of high school, the C's went with the 6'8" Antoine Walker, knowing the decision could haunt the franchise. Indeed it did. 14 years later, 2010 finals. After Boston's Big Three beat Kobe in 08, Bryant won his 5th and final championship, his team's all-time greatest opponent. New Jersey selected Kerry Kittles, a good player, but Kobe torched him and the Nets the 02 finals. Indiana picked Eric Dampier, only to be traded. Bryant had one of his most iconic moments, Game 4 2000 finals, winning on the road with Shaq fouled out. 4 of Kobe's 5 championship opponents had the chance to draft him earlier, beat in the championship. An absolute gut punch they'll never forget. Chauncey Billups, picked third by Boston behind Philly, one of the late boomers. Mr. Big Shot finally became a franchise point guard with the Pistons, having some of his best playoff moments against Iverson's Sixers, a classic 28-point Game 6 closeout, 9 coming in overtime, hit 3 huge bombs after missing 3 games from a bad ankle. The series that arguably gave him the nickname Mr. Big Shot. Also responsible for knocking off AI Sixers, his last playoff series in a Philly uniform. Chauncey responded Game 4, hit 2 clutch treys, scored 10 straight in regulation, the final 305, breaking the hearts of the city of brotherly love forever. Then eliminated the 08 Sixers, led by Andre Miller and young Iguodala. Another 6-game series. Billups' playoff record 12-6 against the team that will forever regret drafting Keith Van Horn over him. Just imagine what a backcourt of Chauncey and AI would have looked like. Paul Pierce, first ever postseason, the truth spoken into action. First round driller versus the defending Eastern Conference champion Sixers, Philly selected Larry Hughes 2 spots over Pierce, who didn't even spend a full 2 seasons before traded. A missed opportunity on a Pierce and Iverson duel. Coach Larry Brown said Philly ranked Pierce the number 2 player in the draft, but already promised to pick Hughes if he was available at 8. An absolute travesty of a decision. After Boston moved on from the Rick Pitino era, the 49-win squad faced off Iverson, Pierce having a legendary 31-point postseason debut, a deciding Game 5 in a best-of-5 series. Truth dropped a ridiculous 46 points, 16 of 25 shooting, overshadowing Iverson's 31 in a 33-point blowout. The reliable mid-range jumpers, Pierce a master getting to his sweet spots, including 8 treys, broke many ankles, officially introduced his name to the biggest of stage. His last playoff series won as a Celtic also came in the hands of the Sixers semis, knocking off the Drew Holiday Iguodala squad. Dwayne Wade 2006, many still bring up the Pistons and the outcome if they drafted Carmelo instead of Darko, when nobody mentions Wade being a draft possibility for the Motor City, being the clear-cut second best player for the historic 03 class. After suffering a strained hip injury, Game 5 of the 05 Conference Finals, missed Game 6, not 100% for Game 7, his team fell to Detroit, but Year 3, Flash was on an absolute mission. His supporting cast of Shaq, Antoine Walker, and Gary Payton on their last legs, the powerful 64-win Pistons with 4 All-Stars was supposed to go back to the finals, but Wade averaged nearly 27 a game, a masterful near 69% true shooting. With Ben Wallace still on the team, the 24-year-old tore Detroit apart on both sides of the ball. Given his epic finals run, the Pistons series slept under the radar, being way too fast for the slower, more fatigued Detroit team, who came off a 7-game series with LeBron's Cavs. Wade most memorable for the mind-blowing circus no-look shot, changing the momentum of Game 4, fully earned superstar status, put in the conversation with the very best players, also gave him the ultimate confidence to carry a team on his shoulders the next series against Dallas. Chris Paul 2018 playoffs, a legacy reliever. Many didn't think he ever advanced to the conference finals, but everything changed. Year 13, being the 4th pick in the 05 draft, Utah selected Deron Williams. Franchise enjoyed a bit of success under the Sloan D. Will and Boozer era, but when Paul was traded to Houston, Williams already out the NBA. Harden was the MVP of the league, but it was CP3 who closed the show in the semis, dropped 27 and 12 rebounds on his 33rd birthday, an easy road win, followed by one of his greatest performances, netted a playoff career-high 41, closed out Game 5, came back in the 4th, straight up wasn't going to be denied, took over, becoming the first player in postseason history to record at least 40 points, 10 assists without a single turnover. On verge of a game from the finals before the devastating hammy injury allowed Golden State to take the next 2, CP3 continued to play amazing ball years after, will now enter year 20 as a Spur. Stephen Curry, Minnesota forever known for drafting Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio over him. Franchise so bad throughout the 2010s, Curry never had to worry about them in the playoffs. Memphis, however, elected with the atrocious Hashim Thabit. Franchise lost to Curry twice, 2015 and 22. Both years, Steph carried Golden State to the title, winning both times in 6 games. OKC being his greatest victim, the main reason for breaking up the Durant-Westbrook duo, only for Kevin to team up with his squad, winning the next 2 titles. The epic 2016 3-1 comeback. Although Clay's Game 6 performance will forever stand out, Steph had 31 of his own, went on to dominate Game 7, an epic 36-piece, 6 bombs, nothing the bigger, stronger, and more physical Thunder could do. OKC no longer having James Harden or Kevin Martin, the big piece traded for the beard. Golden State's only meeting with OKC, the 2010s postseason. Although Curry only faced the Clippers one time, lost in 2014 first round, he did face Sacramento, who drafted Tariq Evans, ended up banned from the league before Curry ruined the franchise's postseason coming out party, successfully came back down 0-2, absolutely dominated Game 7, a signature 50 bomb, a playoff career best, also set the record for most points in the 7th game, averaged almost 34 for the series, proven too good for the younger De'Aaron Fox, playoffs, every one of those West teams absolutely regretting not taking the best shooter the game has ever seen. Lucky number 7 Golden State. Curry deserves to have multiple statues when he retires. Those other franchises might still be hurting a few more decades down the line. Luka Doncic, absolutely the Phoenix Suns' daddy, the most hyped international prospect all time. Not one, but 3 teams screwed it up. From dropping 73 on Atlanta, Luka proved superior to Devin Booker, putting on an all-time clincher, demolished the 64-win Suns, swinging haymakers from the start, from bullying the smaller Cam Johnson to backing down the soft DeAndre Ayton. That's what the franchise get for taking a lazy big man over an all-time great talent. From hiring Luka's national team coach and possibly forming the most deadly backcourt, a duo of Doncic and Booker would have likely won a title or 2 by now. Doncic made the franchise regret every pitiful decision. Ayton failed to get the job done in the 21 finals, hasn't been motivated since. D8 later traded for Yusuf Nurkic. Suns forced to give up its key role players for an older Kevin Durant. Phoenix fans will certainly be shaking if Booker sees Doncic in more future playoff outings. The duo of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, 3-0 against the Sixers. Ben Simmons mentally broken overnight. Boston smart enough knowing Philly would draft the disappointing Markelle Fultz, trading down knowing they got the best player the 2017 draft. Rookie Tatum the best player the 2018 semis. 2023 Game 7 dropped the 51 piece on MVP Joel nowhere to be found Embiid. The Jays also took turns sweeping Joel and Tobias Harris in the bubble. Jaylen now a finals MVP, making a huge case why he should have been the number 1 pick in the 2016 draft. Which one of these superstars gave these teams the biggest embarrassing beatdown after regrettably skipping out on them? Jordan 92 Portland, Luka Suns, Kobe, Larry Bird, and Steph Curry humiliating several teams, or one of the low-key ones like Chauncey Billups destroying the Sixers 2000 style? Share your thoughts on the comments below. See y'all next video.